Systems architect, marrying me means you get all sisters, willing or not. The soft ping of the debt terminal was the final courteous blow to Mason's hopes. The number, his obligation, shown in scarlet, impossible to overcome. Once he'd been the Commonwealth's premier systems architect, lauded for his innovations and decorated for breakthroughs that had spun new trade routes through the void. But talent meant little after he exposed the corruption of his superiors. Now he was ruined. His name, once synonymous with advancement, had become a cautionary tale whispered in corporate corridors and back-alley taverns alike. Across the glass desk, a holographic arbiter, a lattice of pulsing silver light in the rough shape of a human, hovered with the serenity of artificial indifference. The arbiter's voice was smooth, measured, almost compassionate. Indenture is your last recourse, applicant Mason. All other credit lines are closed. He stared down at the contract projected in air before him, a labyrinth of digital ink, hundreds of dense clauses, legalese snaking through each paragraph. But the core was simple enough. The once proud, now desperate Soren conglomerate would erase his debt if he agreed to marry the eldest daughter of the ruling house, Lysen. A cold, transactional rescue, offered not out of kindness, but necessity. Mason's throat tightened. The world had narrowed to a single choice: surrender his future or be crushed by the past. "I'll sign," he said, voice hoarse with defeat and something harder beneath it. He pressed his thumb to the pad. An electric pulse ran through the device. Instantly, his debts vanished, replaced by a single line of text. Contract confirmed. Report to flagship Aurora's wake, Delta Varelian sector. Cycle's end. His journey blurred, a fever dream of cramped shuttles, indifferent stations, and the silent collective gaze of those who recognized a man undone. Security screens flickered with his name. Service bots eyed him with blank suspicion. He ate little, slept less. When he finally boarded the Aurora's wake, the ship loomed over the docking cradle like a city exiled to the stars. Sprawling decks, hull panels faded and flickering with age, once grand banners now dulled by years of neglect. An attendant, a young woman with cobalt skin and obsidian eyes, ushered him wordlessly through the labyrinthine corridors. Every step echoed, amplifying his isolation. They passed through a pair of soaring doors and into the council chamber, a vast shadowed space dominated by a swirling hologram of the sector, constellations dancing in fractal patterns overhead. There, at the center, stood a tall, willowy woman. She turned as he entered, her silhouette catching the light in unexpected ways. Her skin a pale, luminous blue, almost translucent along the sharp lines of her jaw. Her hair a tangle of platinum, falling around her shoulders like liquid metal. Large, glowing orange eyes fixed him in place, and her ears, elegantly pointed, peeked through the pale strands. Silver circuitry-like patterns traced her collarbones and shoulders, faintly pulsing in sync with her breath. She was slender, athletic, and breathtaking in a way that was neither warm nor inviting. But it was her gaze, fiery and severe, that froze him. "Applicant Mason," she intoned, voice crystalline, each syllable precise. "You are here." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "The contract required my presence at this time." She took him in. Calloused hands, worn attire, the ghosts of sleepless nights in the hollows beneath his eyes. Her disapproval was a shield, barely masked. "I am Lysen. By agreement, we are now bound. You have assumed my family's debt, and the Soren conglomerate has assumed yours." Mason straightened, searching for dignity in the wreckage of his pride. "A new start for us both," he offered, the words brittle but not insincere. She gave a smile that was all sharpness and restraint, a fragment of something lost. "You misunderstand, human. This is not a union of convenience. It is a union of necessity. and you have not simply married me." She turned, gesturing to the shadows at the edge of the chamber. 3 figures stepped forward, their presence an unspoken challenge. Each echoed Lisen's beauty, yet none were alike. The first moved with predatory grace, a lithe figure, seafoam skin gleaming in the blue-white light, hair of the same shade tumbling down her back. Her eyes flashed with challenge, her posture tense, as if ready to spring. The second towered over the others, skin a deep indigo, hair snowy silver and cropped close, her bearing silent and powerful. She watched Mason with arms folded, every line of her body promising silent intensity and swift reprisal. The third was petite, rose-skinned, eyes deep amethyst, her gaze sharp, calculating, lips set in a line that hinted at habitual skepticism. "The Soren bond is total," Lisen said, voice flat, as if reciting an ancient law. "When you bind to the eldest, you bind to the house. You have married us all. You are now responsible for our entire crumbling dynasty. Welcome to the family, consort." The silence hung heavy, the weight of expectation and resentment palpable. Mason's gaze moved from one to the next. The seafoam-haired woman, Sirai, whose stance screamed defiance, the indigo sentinel, Tyra, who seemed carved from midnight and iron, the rose-skinned analyst, Muriel, whose mind already seemed to be calculating his worth and shortcomings. Sirai broke the stillness, stalking forward. "So this is it, Lysen, the grand solution. An earthborn mechanic from a backwater planet." Her words dripped with disdain, each syllable a challenge. Muriel's voice was cool, precise, a scalpel to Sirai's blade. "This is what we could afford?" She didn't bother to step forward, her eyes flicking over him with cold efficiency, tallying his value like a ledger entry. "His indenture will barely cover the Varelian interest this cycle." Tyra said nothing, but her presence was a warning. Still, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Mason's expression was unreadable, but his eyes were steady. He was used to being discounted, to expectations set low and victories earned in the shadows. He cleared his throat, voice low but resolute. "The contract grants me operational command. That includes oversight of all Soren assets. I'll begin with an inspection of the flagship's engine room." Sirai scoffed, a short, sharp sound. "You want to examine our core? Our technology is centuries ahead of yours." Mason didn't flinch. "Then I'll learn something new." He turned to Lysen, holding her gaze with calm determination. "Ensure I have full access and the cooperation of your chief engineer." Lysen hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through her mask. But the contract was binding. Her voice, when it came, was firm, but edged with reluctant respect. "Do as he says." The Aurora's Wake's engine bay was a cathedral of alloy and humming conduits. Veins of coolant ran like rivers of silver through the vaulted space, casting shifting reflections across Mason's face as he moved purposefully among the machinery. Girders arced above him, heavy with the weight of centuries, and every surface shivered with the pulse of the ship's massive heart. Technicians hurried about, voices echoing off the plating, but Mason barely noticed. His eyes traced the coolant manifold, the sprawl of access panels, seeing what others had missed. But Mason saw flaws. He paused before a junction, frowning, fingertips gliding over the scorched insulation of a coolant pipe. Condensation beaded where it shouldn't have. The pulse of energy was uneven, a high-frequency whine behind the hum. Outdated cycling, energy lost as heat. Beneath the grandeur, the bones of the old ship were creaking. The chief engineer, Drav, loomed up beside him, a broad-shouldered Soren with olive skin streaked by iridescent tattoos, every inch radiating offense at Mason's presence. Drav's jaw was set, his hands balled into fists. "The core is flawless. It doesn't need Terran meddling. Mason didn't look away. Your flawless core is running at 64% efficiency, he said, voice even. Plasma lines are out of alignment. You're flying a furnace, not a starship. Drav bristled, nostrils flaring. You dare question my work? I was keeping this ship together before your kind even knew the Soren existed. Mason's gaze remained steady. Which is why it's still flying, but that won't last. You're burning through reserves twice as fast as the specs say. You're compensating for energy loss by overclocking the regulators. They'll blow within the month. Silence rippled through the engineering crew, eyes darting between the two men. Drav opened his mouth, but Mason pressed on. Show me your smallest shuttle, Mason said, gesturing to the line of craft under tarpaulins along the far wall. I'll show you what Terran engineering can do. Drav glared, but the contract was clear. Mason outranked him now. With a sharp gesture, he barked an order to the crew. Basics! Make sure he doesn't break anything. For 2 cycles, Mason worked in the hangar, sleeves rolled up, sweat streaking the grime on his face. The Soren's tools were sleek but unfamiliar. He scavenged through piles of outdated parts and, at times, his own meager kit. A battered toolbox, contents clattering as he dug through Terran wrenches, jury-rigged wire, and strips of Terranite alloy. He drafted blueprints in the dust on the shuttle's hull, sketching calculations with a grease-blackened finger. The other engineers watched with a mix of amusement and suspicion. Mason tuned them out, focusing on the core problem. The shuttle's injector was over-designed but underpowered, a relic of Soren pride. Mason tore it apart, rebuilding with rougher, sturdier Terran parts. The result was ugly. A squat, angular Terranite injector welded into place, wires spliced in ways that made the Sorentechs blanch. But every piece was tuned for performance, every adjustment born of necessity and intuition. On the second cycle, Sarai appeared in the hangar, seafoam-skinned, eyes narrowed, stance predatory. She circled the shuttle, her fingers trailing across the battered hull. You want me to fly this? She sneered. If this heap explodes, human, my sisters will invoice your next of kin. Mason wiped oil from his brow, grinning. Just don't get caught by the patrols. Sarai snorted but climbed inside. Technicians scattered as the shuttle powered up, the modified engine emitting a guttural, unfamiliar growl. Mason watched from the hangar floor, tension thrumming in his chest. The shuttle's engine screamed, raw, explosive thrust. The craft shot from the bay like a stone from a sling, blue flames streaking behind it. Sarai's voice burst over the comms, a whoop of exhilaration she couldn't restrain. The shuttle banked hard, sensors flaring as it broke every speed and maneuverability benchmark the Aurora's wake had ever logged. Mason's grin widened as he watched the readouts. Sarai completed the cargo run in record time, blazing through the route and returning before the bay crew had even settled. She stormed onto the bridge, hair wild, slamming the data logs onto the console in front of Lysen. Look at these numbers, she demanded, breathless with adrenaline. Muriel's amethyst eyes widened as she scanned the results, fingers flying over her tablet as she recalculated energy draws and thrust curves. Even Tyra, stoic as ever, arched a single silver brow. Lysen's hands clenched on the console, the only sign of her surprise. For the first time, curiosity replaced suspicion in the eyes of the crew. That night, Mason returned to the engine room, his shirt stripped to his undershirt, skin streaked with sweat and grease. The drive core pulsed before him, its blue-white glow painting his features in sharp relief. Alone, he let himself breathe, the adrenaline of the day ebbing to exhaustion. The door slid open with a hiss. Lysen entered, her steps light, a ration pack in her hand. She paused just inside the threshold, watching him. For a long moment she said nothing, studying the human who had upended her world. Mason, sensing her, turned. Their eyes met, blue to orange, caught in the radiance of the core. She moved closer, extending the meal pack. Their fingers brushed, a spark of static, unexpected and electric. Mason's breath hitched. Lisen's gaze dropped for a heartbeat to his lips, then lifted back to his eyes. The silence between them thickened, charged with something new, something warmer than before. He took the bowl, his hand trembling just enough to be noticed. "Thank you," he said, voice soft. Lisen lingered, her posture less rigid, the arrangement between them cracking just enough to let the possibility of more seep through. After that night, the shuttle's success shifted the mood of the Aurora's wake. Whispers followed Mason through the corridors, no longer dismissive, now edged with curiosity. Sarai watched him with a new, grudging respect, her habitual taunts taking on a different tenor. Muriel's calculations began to factor in the wild card of human ingenuity, her once precise models now hedged with variables for unpredictability. Tyra remained distant, her loyalty fixed on the dynasty, but her eyes lingered on Mason's hands as he worked, assessing rather than condemning. Lisen herself found excuses to visit the engine room, drawn by the puzzle he represented. But the rhythm of routine was short-lived. 2 days from their next run, disaster struck. The Aurora's wake lurched, lights flickering. Mason, in the midst of recalibrating a relay, felt the gravity shift under his feet. Red alarms blared, klaxons rising in a discordant chorus. Lisen's voice cracked through the ship-wide intercom, sharp and commanding. "Status!" A harried technician's voice answered, panicked. "Main drive offline. We're adrift. No response from auxiliary." Sarai's face appeared on the bridge display, jaw clenched. "Worse. We're drifting into the Riven Maelstrom. The gravitic tides will rip us apart." Muriel's hands flew over the navigation, her composure fracturing. "We're being pulled in. No thrust, no maneuvering jets. This isn't just a power failure, it's coordinated." Tyra's voice was cold steel. "Sabotage." Mason burst onto the bridge, boots echoing in the chaos. He moved with calm, his presence a fixed point amid the storm. "It's not just a drive fault," he said, eyes already flicking across the diagnostic panels. "There's a logic trap in the navigation core, a Terran trick. I designed this attack for Commonwealth Black Ops." The words landed like a thunderclap. The sisters stared at him, sudden understanding in their eyes, no longer just a debtor, now a weapon, forged by experience and betrayal. Tyra's gaze sharpened, suspicion laced with fear. "You were military?" Mason didn't flinch. "I was. Lead designer for the Helios project. I exposed corruption. They buried me in debt." Realization dawned. The attack was no accident, no simple mishap. Their rival, Director Voss, had made his move. He hadn't just wanted to ruin them, he wanted them dead. Mason took command, authority ringing in his tone. "Seal the bridge." His words cut through the chaos. Tyra moved instantly, her hand slamming the lockdown control. Heavy blast doors hissed shut, isolating the bridge from the rest of the ship with a final resonant thud. "Sarai, I need live gravimetric data. Feed me the Maelstrom's tidal shifts as they happen. No delays." Sarai slid into the helm, her eyes burning with adrenaline, hands flying over the controls as she called up the wild, ever-shifting gravitic currents outside. "Muriel, be ready to crash Voss's shares the moment we clear the Maelstrom. Set the trades and get every shadow broker we have on standby." Muriel already had her tablet out, fingers dancing as she built a web of proxies and shell companies, tracking the market's pulse with surgical precision. "Lisen, with me in engineering, we'll have to push the core to its limits. Trust me." Mason's gaze locked with Lisen's. For a breathless moment, the world fell away. Just the two of them, bound by the fate of everyone aboard. In the engine room, Alarms howled, klaxons layering over one another until the air seemed to vibrate with danger. Heat radiated from the core, sweat streaming down Mason's neck as he dove into the systems. "I need a full plasma map now," he shouted to the crew. They responded, falling into the rhythm of his orders, adrenaline sharpening their focus. Mason tore open an access panel, rerouting plasma lines by hand, sparks leaping as his wrench connected with live nodes. "Bypass the secondary containment," he barked. "We're not looking for safe, we're looking for possible." Lysen was at his side, scanning readouts, voice tight. "We're going to breach containment if you keep pushing," he explained as he worked, never missing a beat. "The logic trap blocks a safe restart. We can't reboot clean. But if we detonate plasma inside the containment, timed with a gravity wave, it'll sling us out, like firing a slug from a railgun. It's the only shot we've got." "That's madness," Lysen breathed, her hand gripping his arm, knuckles white. The vibration of the core made her entire body hum. He met her eyes, blue burning in the haze of emergency lights. "I need you to believe in me." For a moment, neither moved. Then Lysen nodded, voice a whisper carried on the edge of hope. "I do." Above, on the bridge, Sarai's voice came through the comm, sharp and focused. "We're approaching the heart of the maelstrom, gravity sheer climbing, reading spikes off the charts. If you're going to do this, do it now." Mason shouted to the engine crew, "Clear the chamber. Only Lysen and I stay." The others backed away, eyes wide with a mix of awe and terror. The two of them moved to the purge lever, Mason's hand covering Lysen's. Her fingers trembled beneath his palm, but she didn't pull away. "Synchronize to my mark," Mason said, watching the gravimetric feed flicker on his wrist display. The ship lurched, the maelstrom's tides battering the hull. 3, 2, 1. Now. Together, they pulled. A heartbeat of stillness. The core's whine rose to a shriek, light blinding, plasma surging through the veins of the ship like lightning made flesh. For a split second, all sound ceased, the world holding its breath. Then, detonation. Force slammed through the Aurora's wake, the entire vessel shuddering, light strobing in time with the core's violent pulse. The maelstrom's gravity seized them, twisting, flinging the ship like a comet from a slingshot. Every bolt screamed under the strain. The deck beneath their feet threatened to rip free. On the bridge, the stars blurred and then snapped into focus as the ship burst free of the maelstrom. The alarms stuttered, then fell silent. For a moment, no one moved. They had done the impossible. In engineering, Mason slumped against the bulkhead, every muscle spent. Lysen watched him, chest rising and falling, awe and longing mingling in her luminous eyes. In the heat and peril of the engine room, something deeper than necessity had formed. Respect, trust, and a dangerous attraction neither could deny. The Aurora's wake limped out of the maelstrom battered but alive. As the realization swept through the crew, cheers erupted from every deck. Mason's name echoed in voices both Soren and human. Survival was sweet, but it was more than that. They cheered Mason. Above, on the bridge, Muriel was already moving. As news of the Aurora's wake's loss hit the networks, she executed Mason's market ploy with ruthless efficiency. The price of Soren shares plummeted. Muriel shorted Voss's holdings with a flurry of shadow trades, buying back Soren's at their nadir. As soon as the Aurora's wake reappeared, triumphant and whole, the market surged, netting the dynasty a fortune and leaving Voss exposed and bleeding. Tyra, armed with Mason's Black Ops knowledge and instincts, tracked down the logic trap's signature. She coordinated with loyalists across the ship, her methods swift and merciless. Voss's spies, saboteurs hiding in the crew, were rooted out one by one, dragged before the council and stripped of their rank. For the first time, the sisters were not just surviving, they were fighting back. The dynamic aboard the Aurora's wake shifted. Where once there had been scorn and suspicion, now there was respect, even intrigue. Tyra challenged Mason to sparring in the grav gym, her intensity undiminished. They circled one another, sweat gleaming on skin, blows exchanged with a mix of competitiveness and something far more primal. Each match ended in a tangled heap, breathless and laughing, the air charged with heat. Evenings found Muriel waiting for Mason in the observation lounge, data slates piled high and a pot of strong tea between them. They traded strategies and analysis deep into the night, their conversations a dance of intellect and wit. The boundaries of their partnership blurred, flirtation winding through each debate, glances lingering a little longer each time. Sarai, once openly hostile, now watched Mason with a new, sharp-edged curiosity. She tested his modifications, pushing every system to the edge, and sometimes simply appeared beside him in the hangar, tools in hand, the beginnings of grudging camaraderie sparking in her sly smiles. Lee Sen was changed too. She visited the engine room often, her presence quiet but steady, eyes searching Mason's face for traces of fear, hope, and desire. The gulf between them narrowed, bridged by what they had survived together. The contract was now the axis of Mason's life, a binding that at first had felt like shackles, now revealing itself as a web connecting him to four remarkable women, each captivating and challenging in their own way. He stood at the center of the dynasty, not merely an indentured consort, but a force that could turn fate itself. And around him, the Sisters of Soren gathered, not as jailers, but as equals, rivals, and, perhaps, something more. Mason's days became a blur, refitting the battered Soren fleet with daring hybrid designs, engineering by day, navigating the complex orbit of four wives by night. Every hour demanded a new hat, a chief architect wrestling with alien systems, a diplomatic consort threading the needle of tradition and pride, a partner forced to balance the shifting tides of admiration, rivalry, and something deeper still. Tyra challenged him to sparring matches, her blows fierce but edged with a growing respect. Each bout ended with them breathless and laughing, bruises blooming alongside trust. Muriel pulled him into late-night strategy sessions, holoscreens littered with financials and projections, their minds clashing in games that left them both sharper and subtly entangled. Sarai, ever the skeptic, challenged him on the bridge, double-checking his calculations, pushing him to justify every risk. Her tone was biting, but she never missed a detail. Her challenges, Mason realized, were invitations to prove himself. Yet it was Lysen who became his anchor. She moved with quiet purpose through the ship, eyes always finding his in crowded rooms. Their shared meals became ritual, a sliver of calm amid chaos. Lysen would bring dishes from her world, serving them with a pride that softened only in his presence. The food was strange. Crystalline fruits that shimmered on the tongue, spiced root stews that tingled with an electric aftertaste, breads folded with iridescent seeds. Mason returned the gesture with stories, tales of Earth's city lights in the rain, the taste of real coffee, how the morning fog hung low over the fields of his childhood home. She listened, sometimes silent, sometimes wistful. In return, she told him of Soren, crystalline groves that sang in the solar wind, the hush of snowfall over the domed cities, the weight of legacy, what it meant to be eldest, to bear a dynasty's hope and debts in equal measure. Over time, the conversation deepened, shifting from courtesy to confidence. He caught her smiling more easily, saw the lines of care relax from her brow. One evening, in the engine bay, a plasma flare snapped from a misaligned conduit. Mason jerked back, pain searing up his forearm, the scent of scorched fabric sharp in his nose. Before he could curse, Lysen was there, urgent and unguarded. She pressed a cool cloth to his skin, hands steady despite the tremor in her voice. "You are reckless," she murmured, cleaning and dressing the burn. Her touch lingered longer than necessary, fingers tracing the edges of the bandage. Mason's heart hammered beneath his ribs. "I get results," he replied, voice rough, a smile tugging at his lips despite the pain. She met his gaze, a spark of amusement warming her severe eyes. "You do," she conceded. Her tangled hair brushed his cheek as she leaned close, her scent floral and strange, the proximity dizzying. Her thumb traced his wrist, slow and deliberate. He felt her breath, the tension between them suddenly electric. For a heartbeat, the weeks of unspoken longing boiled over. Her gaze flickered to his lips, her lips parted. He was certain she would kiss him. Then, as if catching herself on the precipice, Lysen pulled away, the mask of composure sliding back into place. But the line had been crossed. The indenture was dead. Something vital and forbidden had taken root, and both of them knew it. Their final test came swiftly. Voss, stung by their survival and the Soren's rising fortunes, issued a formal challenge for control of the Delta Varelian route, a public, sector-wide event. The challenge was as brutal as it was symbolic, a race and combat trial through the deadliest asteroid field on the charts, broadcast live to every ship and station in the sector. The victor would claim not only the route, but the right to define the future of the Soren dynasty. In the council chamber, the sisters gathered around a hollow map, asteroid belts and navigational hazards rendered in glowing relief. "Our ships are still old," Muriel said, her tone grim as she ran the numbers. "Voss's fleet is newer, faster, and he has the home advantage." Mason leaned back, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his lips. "Accept the challenge," he said, voice calm. "The Aurora's wake will answer." Sirai's eyes flashed in disbelief. One ship against his fleet? Her skepticism was sharper than ever. "One is all we'll need," Mason replied, his confidence unyielding. There was a beat of silence as the sisters absorbed this. Then Lysen nodded. Decision made. The wake became a frenzy of activity. Mason and Drav, the chief engineer, worked side by side, sweat-soaked and sleepless, installing a hybrid Terran-Sorin core in the heart of the old ship. Every system was overhauled, patched, or jury-rigged. The crew trained in shifts. Tyra drilled security teams. Muriel and her analysts ran simulations. Sirai mapped every known and theoretical path through the asteroids. Lysen oversaw everything, her authority absolute, but her trust in Mason now visible in every command. On race day, the Aurora's wake glided out of the docks, hull gleaming with new plating, engines purring with alien and Terran tech. The void was alive with ships, drones, and camera relays. Spectators lined every orbit, and Voss's sleek armada arrayed itself in a show of force, hulls polished to a mirror sheen. In the wake's command center, the sisters took their stations. Mason commanded from the center seat, Lysen at his side, her hand close to his on the controls. Sirai settled at the helm, knuckles white on the flight yoke. Tira manned the security console, eyes scanning for threats, and Muriel monitored comms, her face illuminated by a web of tactical feeds. "They're mocking us," Muriel reported, voice tight. "Voss's comms are open. They're broadcasting odds to every station, betting on how quickly we'll be destroyed." Mason glanced at the main view screen, catching the sneering faces of Voss's bridge crew. His jaw clenched, but he kept his focus on Lysen. He reached for her hand, steady and sure. "Trust." She nodded, her fingers tightening around his. For the first time, the line between duty and desire was gone. They were not just partners by contract, but by choice. The countdown echoed through the ship, a drumbeat of destiny. Mason looked around the bridge, at the sisters who had once doubted him, now united by a single purpose. As the final second ticked away, he drew a long breath and gave the order. Let's show them what the Wake, and this family, can do. The race began. Outside the Wake's reinforced viewports, the void erupted in chaos. Asteroids tumbling in mad orbits, Voss's silvered fleet prowling like predators at the starting line. Mason's heart hammered as he nodded to Sarai. She gripped the helm, teeth bared in a fierce grin. The hybrid Terran-Soren core unleashed a torrent of power, the engines roaring to life with a resonance that vibrated through every deck plate. The Wake shot forward, leaving Voss's flagship and its escorts choking on its ion trail. Sarai piloted through the asteroid field with impossible grace. Mason's calculations blazed across the nav screens, vectors, spin rates, projections for every tumbling rock. "Bank starboard, 3 degrees," he called, eyes glued to the ever-shifting data. Sarai's hands moved in perfect time, guiding the massive ship as if it were a dancer, not a battle-scarred city ship. The hull shuddered as they grazed a spinning boulder, but the Wake slipped through a narrowing gap, asteroids scraping harmless sparks across the shields. Behind them, 2 of Voss's cruisers tried to follow the same path. Mason saw it in the rear feeds. A moment's hesitation, a misjudged turn. The ships clipped each other, hulls grinding. One slammed sideways into an asteroid, bursting in a brief star of flame and debris. The other spun, venting atmosphere, engines flickering out. The Wake surged ahead, the field thinning, but danger only grew. "He's firing missiles," Tyra warned, her voice taut. On the main screen, Voss's flagship launched a volley, sleek, intelligent projectiles that weaved between asteroids, hungry for heat signatures. "Muriel, now," Mason ordered, fingers flying over the auxiliary controls. Muriel's eyes were narrowed in focus. She triggered a market dump with a flick of her wrist, sending a cascade of false data through the sector's economic networks. Alarms flashed in Voss's fleet as their targeting computers scrambled to adjust. Numbers crashed, signals jammed, and for a precious handful of seconds, their missile guidance systems faltered, chasing ghosts through the asteroid field instead of the Wake. "Secondary thrusters," Mason barked, flipping a series of switches. Auxiliary engines stuttered in a pattern no computer could predict, firing in erratic bursts. The Wake zigzagged, its course weaving an unreadable spiral through the chaos. Voss's computers tried to compensate, plotting 1,000 false trajectories. Missiles swerved, homing in on decoys, then careened straight into the densest asteroid clusters. The Wake shot across the finish line, hull battered but intact, as Voss's remaining missiles detonated harmlessly on spinning rocks. The field behind them was a storm of wreckage, Voss's fleet in tatters, the sector's eyes riveted on the impossible. Victory was total. In a single gesture, Mason brought up the comms, fingers steady. He broadcast Voss's incriminating orders and spy data sector-wide, encrypted logs, direct commands for sabotage and market manipulation, evidence of every betrayal. The transmission played across every channel, Voss's voice damning himself in his own words. His downfall was public and complete. Allies turned on him in real time, 1,000 voices rising in outrage. In the council chamber, the sisters gathered in a hush that trembled with awe and anticipation. Lysen stood at the head of the table, her presence luminous, the weight of history in her stance. Mason stood with her, the echoes of battle and triumph still ringing in his ears. Lysen lifted a crystalline tablet, her voice clear and steady. "The board has met. All authority is now yours, Consort Mason." She pressed the seal, the words pulsed in golden script. "This is not a contract, it is a coronation. You are Soren's leader, not by bargain, but by right." Sarai stepped forward, her seafoam hair falling loose around her sharp features. "You showed me speed is about daring," she said, her voice quiet but proud. "Not just engines. Daring to trust. Daring to try." Tyra's eyes softened, her usual reserve giving way to something gentler. "You taught us strength is in adaptation," she said. "The strongest aren't the most rigid. They're the ones who bend, who learn." Muriel offered a rare, genuine smile. "The boldest moves yield the greatest gains," she declared. "You bet everything. On yourself, on us, and you won." Mason looked at each of them, his partners, his family. Pride swelled in his chest, mingling with gratitude, relief, and an affection so fierce it was almost pain. He bowed his head, but Sarai reached out, lifting his chin with a touch that was both challenge and invitation. Later that night, after the celebration and the clamor of the ship's corridors faded, Lysen came to his quarters. She entered silently, platinum hair unbound, formal attire replaced by silks that shimmered like starlight. In that moment she was not a ruler, not a symbol. She was simply Lysen. Vulnerable, open, her walls dropped for him alone. She paused at the threshold, searching his face, then moved to stand before him. "The contract is fulfilled," she said softly, voice trembling with feeling. "The dynasty is safe. Your debt is gone. But the bond—" She reached up, her fingers tracing his jaw, lingering. "The bond is not yet sealed. I love you, Mason. Not for the contract. For who you are. We all do. Each in our own way. We are ready to be your wives in every sense." Her confession hung in the quiet, fragile, and powerful. Mason drew her close, his arms wrapping around her, hands buried in her hair. He kissed her, slow at first, then with a hunger born of triumph and longing, of every battle fought and every barrier finally fallen. They became husband and wife in truth, not just in law, joined not by obligation, but by choice, by hope, by love. The bridge of the new flagship was quiet, a testament to Mason's blend of Terran and Soran design, sleek lines of polished alloy, glowing circuits that pulsed in harmony, a panoramic viewport offering a sweep of the stars beyond. Outside, the new fleet shimmered, their hulls reflecting the nebular light, ships of every size and class arranged in a formation that radiated unity and strength. No longer the battered relics of a failing house, these were the vessels of a new dynasty, the Soran-Terra alliance thriving, feared and admired across the sector. Mason stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back, the weight of command sitting easily on his shoulders. He wore no insignia. He needed none. The crew's respect was earned, not commanded. The reflection staring back at him in the glass was different than the one that had first boarded the wake. Older, perhaps, but no longer a debtor, no longer a fugitive. He was a leader, a partner, a husband, and soon, a father. Soft footsteps echoed through the bridge. Lysen entered, her presence unmistakable, a current of warmth and purpose, platinum hair pulled back in a loose braid, her eyes alight with satisfaction. She moved to stand beside him, hip brushing his, close enough for their heartbeats to sync. "A beautiful sight, isn't it?" she murmured, gazing at the fleet arrayed beyond. "Director Halen surrendered the Orion corridor this morning. Muriel's strategy unnerved him." Mason's lips twitched into a smile. "We would have bested him anyway," he replied, letting some of his old bravado slip into his voice. "We," Lysen repeated, savoring the word. She reached for his arm, tracing the thin silvery scar that curled along his bicep, a quiet reminder of plasma burns and the night their love had truly begun. "You seem thoughtful, my love." "Just remembering," Mason said. His voice was soft, touched with nostalgia. "The wake. the fear, the heat. How close it all felt to slipping away. She laughed, rich and low, the sound vibrating between them. I, for one, am grateful for it. Without the fire, nothing new could have been forged. The bridge doors slid open again, and Sarai swept in, flight suit gleaming, boots echoing on the deck. Her eyes sparkled with challenge. Don't relax, husband. I broke your slalom record again. No asteroid's going to outmaneuver me. Mason grinned, rolling his eyes. That's because you cheat with those new thrusters. I saw the signature spike in the telemetry. She smirked, arms folding across her chest. You gave me the tech, Mason. It would be an insult not to use it to its limits. Their banter was quick, playful, a dance of challenge and respect that had replaced old resentments with camaraderie. The bridge seemed to draw the others by gravity. Tira arrived next, silent and strong, her uniform crisp, hair braided tight. She nodded in Mason's direction, eyes softening as she reported, "Perimeter secure. The last of Voss's shell companies is gone. He's finished." Her words were few, but the weight behind them spoke of trust, of nights spent hunting threats together, of a bond forged in shared danger. Muriel glided in last, datapad in hand, her eyes sharp and bright. She wore victory lightly, but her pride was unmistakable. Halen's concession gives us Orion, she announced, tapping through cascading numbers. I've leveraged the assets for your next engine project. As always, we're ahead. She offered Mason a sly smile. One mathematician to another, partners in a private game. Lysen watched as her sisters circled Mason, each finding their place at his side. Her heart swelled with pride, not for the victories alone, but for the family they had built. As much as I enjoy our triumphs, sisters, it's time, she said, voice gentle but insistent. He's waking up. They moved together through the gleaming corridors, no longer strangers but a family, steps in sync, laughter echoing. The family quarters were spacious, designed for comfort as well as tradition, but they had transformed the space. Plants from Sorin and Earth mingled in sunlit alcoves, toys scattered in a riot of color, data slates balanced on tables alongside battered Terran mugs. At the heart of it all was the nursery, awash in golden light from the twin suns beyond the viewport. The room was quiet, the kind of peace that followed storm and struggle. In the cradle, Kyle shifted, a small, perfect bundle of potential. Mason reached down, hands sure as he lifted his son. The baby's skin was blue-tinged, delicate and soft, his ears elegantly pointed, his hair a tousled brown. Mason's own color, but glinting with a sheen unique to Sorin. His eyes opened, impossibly blue, searching and wise. Lysen moved to Mason's side, resting her head on his shoulder. Her hand found Kale's tiny foot. He looks more like you every day, she whispered, awe and affection thick in her voice. Sarai swooped in, her grin wicked. She tickled Kale's stomach with one finger, earning a delighted squeal. He's going to break every record in the fleet by his first birthday, she boasted. Tyra stood at Mason's back, presence solid and grounding. Her gaze softened as she watched the baby, the fierce protector momentarily at peace. He'll have the best defense, she promised. No one will touch him. Muriel knelt by the cradle, her usual composure wavering. She studied Kale's face, then his aura, mind whirring with possibilities. Halen's analysts were terrified when they saw our alliance. If they could see this, she smiled, eyes suspiciously bright. Suddenly, Kale's laughter faded. He stilled in Mason's arms, eyes unfocusing. The air in the room shifted. A low hum, more felt than heard, filled the space. Calm swept through them all, a serene tide. Lysen's frown, present since morning, melted. Sarai's usual restlessness ebbed, her shoulders relaxing. Tira exhaled, eyes going wide with wonder. Even Muriel, always in motion, went quiet, her mind soothed. The resonance, Tyra whispered, voice reverent. It's pure. Muriel's thoughts raced as she pressed a hand to her chest. Our psionics were always chaotic, divided. But this, it's harmony. He's an empath, not a telepath. He unites us. Mason held his son close, feeling a connection that transcended words, species, or legacy. In that moment, he understood. His greatest gift had never been engineering or tactics, or even the boldness that had saved a dynasty. It was heart, the capacity to love, to build bridges, to heal and unite. Humanity's true strength had changed the Soren forever. And in Kale, the future was both promise and proof. His wives gathered close. Lisan's hand slipped into his, her grip sure. Sarai leaned in, a rare softness in her eyes. Tira stood at his back, ever the sentinel, but her presence was gentle. Muriel watched, eyes wide, 1,000 possibilities reflecting in their depths. Together they gazed at their son, a family, ready for whatever the stars might bring. Their debts were paid. The real bond, their love and their future, was one they would joyfully spend a lifetime repaying, together. Our story ends here. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.